Two. We are live. October Red. I'm joined by the lovely, the amazing, the intellect, the boxing historian, the presenter, whether it's Talk Sport, whether it's Battle of the Baddies podcast owner, Gareth A. Davies. A massive welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining me. A pleasure.
My pleasure. It is October Red. It's I think it's my debut on here with you, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely the live debut, and I hope it's one of many.
Well, I will always do it if you need me to do it.
Listen, Gareth, boxing at the moment, I know your expertise at the moment is lying with Riyadh season. So it'd be rude of me to talk about anything else except for that. You being there from the beginning, knowing what's going on behind the scenes, how did it all come about to where we first ended up with the Fury and Ngannou card?
Well, I think that there was an appetite in Saudi Arabia to get involved in big time boxing, and we saw that play out on October the 28th. Seven of the top 15 heavyweights in the world with the four sanctioning bodies, and we got the shock result on the night with Tyson Fury, one of his worst performances, of course, but not underrating Francis Ngannou. I always said, this wasn't going to be an exhibition. It was always a fight. Francis Ngannou, 20 stone, 6'5", coming to change the course of history. And even though he lost on points, he did still shock the world and has become a player in the heavyweight division. He'll, I'm sure, have two or three very big fights now. It was a shock for Tyson Fury. I think it was a shock when he was knocked down in the 8th minute, and I think he didn't recover in that fight in many ways. And Ngannou has become a prevalent figure in the division now. And whether you agree or not with the WBC installing him as number 10 in their rankings, I don't see him going on to become a world champion in heavyweight boxing. But as I say, he's become a player in that group now. Will he fight Wilder at some point? Will he fight Anthony Joshua at some point? They're all kind of fights I think we'd all like to see. But as you can see from last week's announcements, kind of working backwards, we've got the undisputed heavyweight title on February the 17th between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk. I think His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh and his team have got that over the line with Spencer Brown and Frank Warren and Bob Arum and others who obviously represent Tyson Fury, and also the willingness and cooperation from Alex Krasiuk and Alexander Usyk's team. It's fantastic. We've got this. It's amazing, isn't it, when you think, I don't know whether to call it October because we're in November, but to call to call the undisputed title when it's only happened the last time 25 years ago in 1999 with Evander Holyfield and Lennox Lewis is extraordinary, really. But these are the nuances and the rivalries and the enmities that go on in the division with promoters and broadcasters and boxers not aligned. Maybe this is the moment where we are going to get that paradigm shift in the division. And even on that December 23rd card, there are 10, I counted, of the top 15 heavyweights in the four sanctioning bodies rankings that are on that card. So it's an amazing time for the sport, all made possible by the investment of the Saudi Arabians.
And that is a spot on point. But what I always like to do, Frank, is I've got Frank Warren on the brain. Gareth is a shout out to the chat. I've got some brilliant YouTube subscribers. I need to go up. So Mobs Blogs. Let's have a look. Raj, I think he was here first. So shout out to Raj. Shout out to Rob. Chizoni Nioni, Toby Bartlett. Mobs Blogs, Nick Harmer, Cornell as well, fellow Brummy. Shout out to you. Let's have a look. Make sure I've got everyone's SWJ. Yeah, look. Reese Cooper says you're a Fury specialist. We've got to have specialists. And thanks for that. Combinations, we've got to make it work. Good afternoon, G-Tain and VJ. Yep, Gad is always a guest that I like speaking to Gareth because of his knowledge in the sport, because he's experienced. And I think sometimes we take experience for granted. It's not always about the young, fresh, TikTokers or whatever generation we're in now, because Gareth would have been there around for that undisputed with Evander and Lennox 25 years ago. He can give us that experience. So I've got respect for that order, that hierarchy in boxing. So Gareth always has my respect, and the fact that he just says what he wants, and if he's got his favourites, so what? So have I. This is it. We're not afraid of having our favorites. Thank you to all of you in the chat. But like you said, one of the things that you've mentioned is the fight getting put on. Gareth, what does it take? I mean, we've built an empire of promoters, haven't we? They've got, Frank Warren's got his corner, Eddie Hearn's got his corner, and the other promoters in the UK. I've been banging on about let's work together, but I mentioned it in sort of like a tournament style. But His Excellency has seen this, he's got the money, and he's like, you know what? I don't care about you as a promoter or you. I want to just get everybody together and let's start making these fights. You said it, top 10 ranked fighters all on a table together. Gareth, back to you.
Well, I think, thank you for your compliments. I think the key is, we live in a world where everyone wants it to happen now. People are very critical all the time. Everybody's an expert. Everybody's got their opinions, and that's fair enough. But I think when you've seen the whole kind of circle of life of boxing many times, I think it does take extraordinary events sometimes, extraordinary events. I mean, I recall when Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao fought a few years back. 5 years we were writing about that being in the making. And it took both of them being at a basketball game together in the same lounge to get it over the line. And I think, sometimes, I don't like to go with extreme views on things because it doesn't help anyone. And, you talk to people when you're involved in the sport deeply in the background, and you hear that things maybe are moving slowly, that someone has pulled out of a certain fight because they're hearing that something else is going to occur down the line because there are talks going on that will actually genuinely will make it happen. It's like if you look at Fury Usyk happening in February next year, it wouldn't surprise me to have all the broadcasters involved on both sides of the pond, because that's what we've seen in the very biggest fights. And I think it does take time to get things over the line. For me, it's three things align: money, ego, and timing, and they're all aligned here. The investment from the Saudi Arabians, the time to have the fight now for Fury and Usyk. I mean, you've even got people saying, "Oh, I don't think Fury will turn up for the fight," and I'm not sure about that at all. I think he's clearly keyed up for the fight. We saw that in the press conference. He was trying to unsettle Alexander Usyk. He was selling the fight. But I just don't believe in very hard line views about things. The only thing I've been quite a hard line about in the last year has just been about drug testing, and that, just a transparency around drug testing, because boxing is an inherently dangerous sport. But I think it has been a difficult year for the heavyweight division because we haven't got the fights we wanted. But I think it's ending in a terrific way. And I do think we're going to have an incredible 2024 and 2025 with the culmination of all these big fights in the heavyweight division. And as I said at the top, October Red, that when the heavyweight division's strong, the rest of boxing is really strong. And I think we will get that from here on in. And I do think we're seeing a shift in the sport.
Yeah. And I think it's good to see that shift in the sport. I mean, somebody's Somebody's put a comment on here, and I'm just going to address this. San Mito, Gareth's views on the humanitarian concerns with Saudi Arabia, given a large investment in boxing recently. And this is where we can sort of like, we can end up getting very political. And as you know, obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world at the moment, which is politically sensitive. So what I will say, just on Gareth's behalf, is that we won't be discussing anything to do with any politics. We're going to keep it to boxing only, because it will distort the conversation. I appreciate everybody has views and opinions, rightly or wrongly, but I do want to keep this chat to boxing, because we're going to end up going down a hole we really don't need to at the time. But I'm not dismissing what you've said, but we're going to keep it to boxing. So respectfully, thank you to your comment, but we are going to keep it to boxing. Yep. Let's have a look. Emmett has commented, good to see Alex Krasiak shutting up at the presser when Uncle Frank told them to duck the Fury fight last December because of injury, and April because of signing with Skills Challenge. Any thoughts on that, Gareth? Thank you, Emmett.
Well, I spoke to Alex Krasiak at the time, and the Wembley, I think it was April the 29th, didn't work for them. But also, when you look at the finances at the time, I think they knew there could be a bigger night ahead. And he was open about saying they did pull out of that because it didn't work for them at the time, and that's out there. But people saying that Fury pulled out of that fight, it's just not the case. Obviously, there wasn't a great deal, in my view, on the table at the time. I think it was a 70-30 they'd been offered, hadn't they? Fury and Usyk, and they knew that there'd be a better deal along the way. He's got 3 of the belts. He's beaten Joshua twice, and I think they've done separate deals, my understanding, with the Saudi Arabians. So it's worked out for both men. You don't have to make it happen yesterday. We've got it on February the 17th, and it's as simple as that.
They do say that everything, happens for a reason, and nothing before its time. I mean, I remember at the time when the negotiations were there, it did look like, and this is me as a fan, as a boxing fan, that Fury was making those unnecessary, time limits, those demands, frustrating Team Music, and literally backing them into a corner to say, you know what, I just can't be bothered with this negotiation. Therefore, them backing out. So when you go back to it, it looks like, yeah, they pulled out. But there was a lot of frustration at that time. And, I get it, Team Fury were trying to make things work, just like they were with the Anthony Joshua fight. But then Fury became quite demanding, putting time constraints and frustrating the other parties. It must be tough sometimes, Gareth, because I will sit on that side of the fence, because that's how I saw it as a fan.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a good chance of it happening in February originally, but obviously that fell through. This is a fight that was talked about for 3 or 4 possible iterations, and again, timing, ego, money, none of it really worked. And it took, as you say, to get to this point for both men to be under the same roof. I think when His Excellency met with Alexander Usyk last year, earlier this year, when you saw that picture come out, you knew they were talking. It was the same when there were pictures with Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua. You knew they were talking. They're making things happen, and I think a degree of patience is always necessary. It's easy to have kind of views over here or over there. It hasn't happened for certain reasons, but the timing is there now, and what's gone on in the past has happened in the past. If it wasn't right for Usyk up to now, that's fine. It's right now. I think it's going to be a very close fight. I think, Tyson Fury has got to put on a commanding performance against Usyk. There's no doubt about that. And the winner of this fight, or if they fight twice, will emerge, I think, as the dominant figure in the era. Maybe Usyk still needs to fight a Wilder. I'd like to see that fight. I think that's a terrific fight as well. But I do think we'll see all these big fights in the next 24, 26 months. I'm going to have to go
Mm.
shortly, by the way. I know I was late coming on. And I appreciate everybody waiting 7 or 8 minutes because I was late. But I've got another call to do at 2. Have you got a final one?
Yeah, let's have a look. Hold on. Du-du-du-du. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Here we go. No, because he's paid a super chat, so I will go to Gallistic. I like that one. Do you think boxing should be like the UFC with all the big investors like Saudi and a push from the influencers like Misfits? Good question, and thank you very much for the super chat.
Sorry, do you think boxing should be like the UFC with all the big investors, like Saudi, and a push from the influencers? I don't understand the question, I'm afraid.
The model, the UFC model,
Could
it seems like
could you
you what? Sorry.
could you ask Gallistic just to resend that question?
Yeah, resend the question if you can. And shout out to Declan as well, that's jumped in. I think he means like the model with like there's a single control over it. Gillisty, if you hear that, jump in there quickly because Gareth has
Well,
literally got to get off. The control
well,
is
if the
Turkey Al Sheikh like the new Dana White, one for a better word.
I don't think so at the moment. I mean, he's certainly proven to be an amazing facilitator to get these fights over the line. He and his team, of course,
Mm.
they've there's no doubt they've shaken up the heavyweight division and put it in the right direction and made outstanding kind of decisions in terms of getting all these fighters under the same roof, getting the promoters under the same roof. I think it will change boxing, and it is changing boxing. I mean, I think the moves that are going on right now are brilliant for the sport. Whether you can get the 4 sanctioning bodies, all the commissions, all under one roof would be brilliant. We don't have a world governing body. The UFC
Correct.
is a single league. If you create boxing as a single league and we know who all the world champions are, and that we get the proper rankings system and there's just one ranking system, and and the champion fights number 1 and 2 and 3 fight and they become the next person to fight for the belt, I think that's all amazing. I think it is all heading definitely on the same highway and in the right direction at the moment. Whether you can do exactly what the UFC have done, are 30 years old this year and have developed a single track with kind of supreme control in that way is another thing. But if they can do it, it will only be good for boxing.
There you have it. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in. This was a very literally off the cuff live. Hopefully, we'll do something again soon, Gareth. Thank you for answering the
Love to.
questions from the chat. And I like that because it takes a lot sometimes when you're in the industry where you are to be able to answer questions live from sometimes which can be quite we're quite fickle, we're critical, we say what we like. So absolute credit to yourself. But Gareth, I'm not going to keep you any longer. We will catch up soon. All the best and thanks again.
My pleasure to come on,
Guys,
October Reds, and thanks to all your fans for doing it. Cheers. Thank you.
guys, thank you very much for listening in. I appreciate it. Like I said, it was off the cuff. Remember, the review's out now, and we'll be going live again on Saturday night for the watch along. So, thank you very, very much for joining in. Until the next time, you know what we say, stay ready.